Let's go right to the phone calls. First up today is Dan in Renton, Washington. Hi, Dan.
Hi, good afternoon, Hank.
Good afternoon.
I listen to you whenever I can, and you addressed an issue about the gentleman's father and if he was in heaven, in terms of a place. And if I understood you, are you saying it's not an actual place at this point?
Well, souls are non-physical, right?
Correct.
So to ask where a soul is a category mistake.
Okay, then my question, I guess, would be based on the end of Mark and Acts chapter 1, when Jesus' physical body was ascended into heaven. The angel said, "Why do you look into this guy? He's been taken up from you into heaven." And so his physical body, it doesn't say his spirit left his body as he ascended.
Right, but remember that when we talk about Jesus Christ ascending, we're talking about something which is very unusual, which is to say that Jesus Christ transcended time and space. If you take the language in a wooden literalistic fashion, you have nonsense. If Jesus is ascending into heaven, and heaven is a place up there somewhere, even if he's traveling at the speed of light, he's not out of our galaxy yet, much less out of the universe. He's probably struggling with oxygen deprivation right now. So you have to recognize the reality biblically of what is being communicated. And what is being communicated is quite obviously that the God-man transcended time and space. So I think we need to, unless we want the Bible just to be nonsense to our ears, we need to contextualize what we're reading by what we know based on other parts of Scripture. So we should always interpret Scripture in light of Scripture as opposed to going off on some kind of flight of fantasy.
Well, I couldn't agree more. I think Scripture has to be interpreted with Scripture, but on the other hand, I don't think it's veiled in such a way that we can't see it. Why would the angels have said to those looking up at the ascension, "Why are you looking into the sky? This Jesus, who has been taken up from you into heaven, will come in the same way as you've watched him go into heaven." They said it twice, and in my mind, does that mean that heaven is above all the galaxies and Jesus had to travel? No, heaven doesn't have to be visible to the human eye. I mean, it could certainly...
Okay, so you explain to me where a soul is if a soul does not have extension in space.
Well, I believe the last breath, the soul is in heaven.
Okay, but when you say the soul is in heaven, souls don't have awareness, right? Biblically, they have awareness, but souls don't have awareness. They don't have extension in space.
They don't have a physical body because they're going to be resurrected with a new body. I agree.
Not with a new body, with the body that we have. This is a completely distorted notion to say new body. It's not a new body. It's this body. There's continuity between the body that is and the body that will be. The body goes through a metamorphosis, but it's not altogether other. The DNA that makes you you is the DNA that makes you you for all eternity. It's very much like what happens to a caterpillar. A caterpillar goes into a chrysalis, like a casket, as it were. It devolves into a molecular soup, and then out of that comes a butterfly with different constituent parts, but it is still a continuity between the caterpillar and the butterfly that is in view. So to say a new body or an altogether other body would be incorrect.
Well, except for those that their bodies have been completely destroyed. They weren't...
Well, when we talk about continuity, we're not talking about every molecule being resuscitated. We're talking about continuity between the body that is and the body that will be. So there's no necessity... Go ahead.
If you could just answer this. If Jesus' physical body that had eaten and had, told Thomas to touch him in his side, it was a physical body. He ascended. He's seated at the right hand of God, and what happened to his physical body if it didn't go to where heaven is, which, I don't think it's billions of light years away.
Well, where do you think it is?
I don't necessarily think it's very far away at all, because when the rich man was being tormented and Lazarus could see him from there, I don't think that, even though there's a chasm that can't be crossed either way.
But how can you see the rich man in the sense that you're talking about seeing the rich man? The rich man dies. Now his body goes to the ground. His soul is what his identity remains, right? A sameness of soul that establishes identity over time. So the soul continues on, but that soul is not physical. So how can anyone see what is not physical?
Well, I mean, the way Jesus told it, the rich man was able to see Lazarus.
Right, but you understand that you can't see a soul. So the Bible is using a heavenly condescension. I mean, if you start interpreting Scripture in the way that you're interpreting Scripture, you get all kinds of problems. You know, God said to Adam and Eve, "Where are you?" Well, if you take that at face value, God didn't know where Adam and Eve were. God walked with Adam and Eve in the cool of the day. Now God has big feet. God says that he would love to cover us as a hen covers her chicks with its wings. Now God's a big chicken. I mean, I am the door. Now God is a door. I mean, this is no way to interpret Scripture.
Well, when God says that he wishes he could cover us like a chick does with her wings, he's not saying he has wings. When he walked with Adam and Eve in the garden, I don't see where the fact that he walked with them means he has big feet. I mean, if Jesus...
Well, by the same token, when Jesus uses the heavenly condescension of describing the rich man and Lazarus, we know that both of them have died. We know to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. So now we're absent from the body, we're disembodied, and therefore we do not have extension in space, and therefore you cannot see a soul, but a soul has awareness, and that soul is in the presence of God, and God himself is spirit, and therefore God himself is not physical.
Okay, and I would agree with that, but the Bible doesn't give any indication one way or another that other souls cannot see other souls.
Well, but souls can't be seen. You can't see a demon.
No, but evidently demons and angels can see each other because they fight with each other.
Well, they can know about each other, and a demon is said to be where a demon acts. These are category mistakes. These are pure and simple category mistakes. And what I'm fighting for here in the discussion with you is the literal principle of biblical interpretation, which is to say that the Bible is literature. It is infallible, inspired literature. And if we take the metaphors of Scripture and we read them in a wooden literalistic sense, then you're going to get to the Olivet Discourse, and you're going to say immediately after the distress of those days, the sun will be dark and the moon will not show its light, and the stars will fall from the sky. And you're going to think actual stars are going to start falling out of the sky. That, of course, is absurdity. One star would obliterate the earth. So when you start interpreting the Scripture that way, no wonder the skeptic thinks that you've given your life to nonsense as opposed to sense, not just sense, but the only sense.
Well, and again, I think many parts of the Bible need to be taken literally. Some are certainly figurative in nature, but it seems to me, just going back to the original point, if he is taken up into heaven and he is seated, why would the angels have said in such a clear way that he was taken to this place and he is seated there? If he
right next to God on a throne. You think the Father's sitting on a throne as well?
Yes.
So God has a physical body?
No.
Okay. How does God, without a physical body, the omnipresent God, sit on a golden throne with a crown on his head? I mean, these kinds of descriptions that you have in the Bible are not telling us what God looks like, but rather what God is like. The same thing could be said with respect to Jesus Christ. John saw Jesus Christ. Now, if you take the language at face value, he's seeing the Son of Man dressed in a robe reaching down to his feet. He has a golden sash around his chest. His head and his hair are white like wool, as white as snow. His eyes are like blazing fire. His feet are like bronze glowing in a furnace. His voice is like the sound of rushing water. In his right hand he holds 7 stars. Out of his mouth comes a sharp double-edged sword. his face was like the sun shining in all of its brilliance. This is not communicating what Jesus looks like, as though you can take this language and draw a composite picture of the Lord of glory. This is telling us what Jesus is like. And that's an important distinction. Appreciate the discussion.